dinner party was going perfectly. Too perfectly, I should have realized. I stood in my kitchen, watching Richard charm our guests with that devastating smile of his. At 38, he still had that boyish quality that had first caught my attention 7 years ago. The way his dark hair fell slightly over his forehead when he laughed. How his eyes crinkled at the corners when he told his stories. "Stephanie, this salmon is incredible," called out Marcus from the dining room. I smiled and waved, but my attention kept drifting back to Richard. He was animated tonight, more so than usual. There was an energy about him that I hadn't seen in months. Olivia caught my eye from across the room and raised her wine glass in appreciation. My best friend of 15 years looked stunning, as always, her auburn hair catching the candlelight perfectly. At 42, she had this effortless elegance that I'd always envied just a little. Tonight, she wore a black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. "You've outdone yourself," she mouthed to me, and I felt that familiar warmth of friendship wash over me. As I cleared the dessert plates, I noticed the subtle glances between my guests. The way conversations paused when I entered a room, then resumed with forced brightness. Maybe I was being paranoid, but something felt off tonight. Richard brushed past me in the kitchen, his hand trailing across my lower back in that possessive way he'd always done. "Great party, babe," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Everyone's having a wonderful time." I leaned into him instinctively, breathing in his familiar cologne. "I'm glad, though you seem especially happy tonight." He pulled back slightly, and for just a moment, I caught something in his expression. Guilt, excitement, before I could analyze it further. He kissed my forehead and rejoined our guests. The evening wound down around 11. Marcus and Sarah left first, followed by the Johnsons. Olivia lingered, as she always did, helping me load the dishwasher while Richard took out the trash. "Richard seems in great spirits," she commented, her voice carefully neutral. "He does, doesn't he?" I studied her profile as she rinsed wine glasses. "Any idea why?" Olivia shrugged, but her cheeks flushed slightly. "Maybe he's just happy to have everyone over. You know how he loves being the center of attention." She wasn't wrong about that. Richard had always been magnetic, the type of man who commanded a room without trying. It's what had drawn me to him initially, that confidence, that charisma. After she left, I found her phone on the coffee table. I picked it up, intending to call her immediately. But the screen was still unlocked, and a text notification caught my eye. The preview showed Richard's name and the beginning of a message that made my blood freeze. "Can't wait to taste you again." My hands trembling, I opened the message thread. What I found there shattered my world. Months of messages. Explicit, passionate, romantic messages between my husband and my best friend. I scrolled through them with growing horror, each word feeling like a physical blow. "Richard, last night was incredible. The way you moved beneath me, Olivia, I keep thinking about your hands on my body. When can we meet again? Richard, soon, beautiful. Stephanie's working late tomorrow. Come over around 8. Tomorrow. They were planning to meet tomorrow in my house, in my bed. I sank onto the couch, the phone clutched in my shaking hands. The messages went back 4 months. 4 months of lies, of looking me in the eye while they planned their betrayals. The worst part was reading Richard's words to her, words he'd once whispered to me. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I've never felt this way about anyone. You complete me. Lies. All of it had been lies. I could hear Richard upstairs, getting ready for bed, humming softly to himself. The same tune he'd hummed on our honeymoon. My stomach churned. More messages appeared as I scrolled. Photos I couldn't bear to look at. Plans for weekend getaways they'd taken while I thought Richard was on business trips. Details about how they'd laugh about my ignorance, my trusting nature. Olivia, she has no idea. Sometimes I feel guilty. Richard, don't. What we have is special. She'll never understand passion like this. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. These were the 2 people I trusted most in the world, and they'd been systematically destroying my life while I cooked them dinner and planned birthday parties. I thought about confronting them, storming upstairs and throwing the phone in Richard's face, calling Olivia and screaming at her until my voice gave out. But something cold and calculating settled over me instead. They thought I was naive, trusting, easy to fool. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I began taking screenshots, methodically saving every message, every photo, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. My fingers moved with surgical precision, documenting everything. As I worked, a plan began forming in my mind. They wanted to play games. Fine. I could play games too, but I would win. I saved the most damaging messages first. The ones where they explicitly discussed deceiving me. The ones with the most graphic details. The ones that showed premeditation and cruelty. Then I went back further, finding the very first message, the moment their betrayal began. Richard, I can't stop thinking about you, Olivia. What happened at the conference? Olivia, I know, but Stephanie, Richard doesn't have to know. This can be our secret. A conference. They'd started this affair at a conference I hadn't attended because I'd been home with the flu. The irony wasn't lost on me. Once I'd saved everything, I carefully deleted all evidence from Olivia's phone, every message, every photo, every trace of their communication. Let them think their secret was still safe. I heard Richard's footsteps on the stairs. Stephanie, you coming to bed? Just finishing up, I called back, my voice remarkably steady. Olivia left her phone. I'll return it tomorrow. That's nice of you, babe. Nice? Yes. I was going to be very nice. I placed Olivia's phone exactly where I'd found it, then went upstairs to my cheating husband. He was already in bed, looking relaxed and satisfied. Great party tonight, he said as I entered our bedroom. Wasn't it? I began removing my jewelry, watching him in the mirror. Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves, especially Olivia. She looked beautiful tonight, the audacity of him complimenting his mistress to my face. But I just smiled. She did. She always does. Richard patted the bed beside him. "Come here, beautiful." I almost laughed at the endearment. The same one he'd used with Olivia in dozens of messages. Instead, I climbed into bed, letting him pull me close. "I love you, Stephanie," he whispered against my hair. Another lie. But soon, very soon, everyone would know exactly what kind of man Richard really was, and what kind of friend Olivia had been. I closed my eyes and began planning their destruction. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Richard was already in the shower, humming some tune that probably reminded him of Olivia. I lay there listening to the water run, formulating my strategy. I needed more evidence. Screenshots weren't enough. I needed something that would destroy them both completely. When Richard emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, I was sitting up in bed with what I hoped looked like a loving smile. "Morning, handsome," I purred, patting the bed beside me. He looked surprised. We hadn't been particularly affectionate in months. Now I knew why. But he sat down, and I ran my fingers through his damp hair. "You seem different this morning," he said, studying my face. "Different how?" I leaned closer, letting my nightgown slip off one shoulder. The fabric was silk, expensive, a gift from him last Christmas, probably bought with guilt money. Richard's eyes darkened. "I don't know, playful. It's been a while since." "Since what?" I traced a finger down his chest, feeling him shiver. "Since I reminded my husband how much I love him." The word love felt like ash in my mouth, but I delivered it perfectly. Richard pulled me closer, and I let him kiss me, even though all I could think about were those messages. "Can't wait to taste you again." When he finally left for work, I immediately called Olivia. "Stephanie, thank God you called. I left my phone at your place last night. I know I found it. Want to grab coffee? I can bring it to you. You're an angel. That new place on 5th Street. Noon. Perfect." I spent the morning researching private investigators online, then prepared for my performance with Olivia. I chose my outfit carefully. A cream silk blouse that made my skin glow, fitted jeans that Richard always said made my legs look incredible. If I was going to play the devoted wife and loyal friend, I was going to look the part. Olivia was already at a corner table when I arrived, looking radiant in a way that now made perfect sense. The glow of a woman getting satisfied regularly by my husband. "Stephanie." She jumped up to hug me, and I forced myself not to recoil. "Last night was amazing. You always throw the best parties." "Thank you." I handed her the phone, watching her face for any sign of panic. But she just slipped it into her purse without checking it. "I'm so glad everyone had fun." We ordered our usual lattes for both of us, and I waited for the perfect moment. "So," I said, stirring my coffee slowly, Richard mentioned you looked beautiful last night. Olivia's cheeks flushed slightly. Did he? That's sweet. He's been noticing beautiful women a lot lately. I kept my tone light, conversational. I think it's a good sign for our marriage, you know. Shows he's still got that appetite. She shifted in her chair. That's good. Oh yes, very good. I leaned forward conspiratorially. In fact, he's been so passionate lately. More adventurous than he's been in years. I keep wondering what's gotten into him. The color drained from Olivia's face. She knew exactly what had gotten into him. Or rather, who he'd been getting into. Maybe he's just happy, she managed. Maybe. I sipped my latte, savoring her discomfort. Actually, speaking of Richard, I wanted to ask you something. You know our anniversary is coming up, 15 years next month. Of course, October 20th. She knew the date. Of course she did. She'd probably been dreading it, knowing she'd have to watch me celebrate with the man she was screwing behind my back. I'm planning something special. A surprise party, maybe. Would you help me organize it? Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. A surprise party. For Richard. For both of us, really. A celebration of our marriage. I smiled sweetly. I want it to be perfect. Intimate. Just our closest friends and family. Stephanie, I don't know if I'm the right person to. Please. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're my best friend. You know us both so well. You'd know exactly what would make Richard happy. She stared at our joined hands, and I could practically see the war happening in her head. How could she help plan a celebration of the marriage she was actively destroying? Of course, she said finally. I'd be honored to help. Wonderful. We should start planning right away. Maybe we could meet this weekend. Saturday afternoon. Saturday. Her voice cracked slightly. I think I might have plans. Oh, anything exciting. I watched her scramble for an excuse, knowing exactly what her Saturday plans were. Richard had told me he was playing golf with the guys, but according to those messages, he and Olivia had been meeting every Saturday at some hotel downtown. Just errands. But I could move them. Don't be silly. We can meet Sunday instead. I released her hand and sat back. Or maybe Richard, and I could come to your place Saturday evening. Make it a fun planning session. The panic in her eyes was delicious. No, I mean, my place is such a mess right now. Let's stick with Sunday. I nodded understandingly, filing away every reaction, every tell. She was going to meet my husband on Saturday, and she was terrified I'd find out. If you're hooked on this story, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. We finished our coffee with me playing the role of excited wife and grateful friend, while Olivia squirmed in her chair. When we parted ways, she hugged me tightly. I love you, Stephanie. You know that, right? Of course I do. I hugged her back just as tightly. And I love you too, Olivia, more than you know, as I watched her walk away, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. She had no idea that her phone was clean, that I'd already captured everything I needed. She was probably rushing home right now to check her messages, to make sure nothing incriminating remained. But the real trap was just beginning. That evening, Richard came home with flowers, a small bouquet of tulips, my supposed favorites. Except my favorites were peonies, and had been for the entire 15 years of our marriage. These tulips were probably Olivia's favorites. "What's the occasion?" I asked, accepting the flowers with a bright smile. "Do I need an occasion to bring my beautiful wife flowers?" Another lie wrapped in charm. But I played along, standing on my toes to kiss him. "You're so romantic lately. I love this side of you. There are a lot of sides of me you haven't seen," he murmured against my lips. Oh, but I had seen them. I'd seen them all spelled out in explicit detail in his messages to my best friend. That night, as Richard slept beside me, I lay awake planning every detail of their destruction. The anniversary party would be perfect, the perfect stage for the perfect revelation. I was going to give everyone a celebration they'd never forget. The next morning, I watched Richard get dressed for work with new eyes. Every movement seemed calculated now, every gesture a potential lie. When he adjusted his tie in the mirror, I wondered if Olivia would be seeing it later. "Big day today," I asked from the bed, my voice honey-sweet. "Just the usual meetings." He didn't meet my eyes. "Might be late tonight, though. Johnson wants to discuss the Peterson account." Another lie. Johnson had been out of town for 2 weeks. I'd seen his vacation photos on social media. But I smiled and nodded like the trusting wife I was supposed to be. "Of course, darling. I'll keep dinner warm." After Richard left, I sat at my laptop with a cup of coffee and began my real work. If I was going to destroy them both, I needed evidence that couldn't be questioned or explained away. Screenshots of deleted messages wouldn't be enough. I started with the obvious, Richard's credit card statements. 20 years of marriage meant I had access to everything, and Richard had never bothered to hide his passwords. They were all variations of our wedding date, pathetically easy to crack. What I found made my stomach turn. Hotel charges every Saturday for 4 months. Expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Jewelry purchases from stores I'd never shopped at. A paper trail of betrayal, all funded by our joint accounts. The Riverside Hotel downtown, $320 every Saturday. The same room number in the records I could access online. Room 1247. They had a regular spot, like some twisted romantic tradition. I made copies of everything, organizing the evidence in a folder on my desktop labeled Anniversary Plans. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I needed more than financial records. I needed them in the act. That's when I remembered Richard's laptop. He'd left it at home, claiming his desktop at the office was faster for his morning presentations. I'd always respected his privacy before, but those days were over. His email told the story I'd expected. Reservations at the Riverside Hotel. Flower delivery confirmations. Tulips to Olivia's apartment, sent from your secret admirer. restaurant bookings for two. And then I found the photos. My hands shook as I scrolled through them. Olivia in lingerie I'd helped her pick out for her ex-boyfriend. Richard shirtless in what was clearly a hotel room. The two of them together, her head on his chest, both of them laughing at some private joke. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how happy they looked. How natural and comfortable, like this was where they belonged. Like I was the intruder in their love story. I screenshotted everything, my fingers moving mechanically, while my heart shattered all over again. 20 years of marriage, reduced to evidence files on a computer screen. But the real breakthrough came when I installed tracking software on Richard's phone. A simple app disguised as a system update, downloaded when he left his phone charging in the kitchen. Technology made betrayal so much easier to catch these days. Within hours, I could see everywhere he went. The Riverside Hotel, just as I'd suspected. Olivia's apartment building, a jewelry store downtown, where he'd apparently bought her a bracelet. The same bracelet I'd complimented her on last week, assuming it was from some new boyfriend. I hired a private investigator that Wednesday. Patricia Mills came highly recommended from the divorce attorney I'd secretly consulted. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd seen every kind of cheating husband imaginable. 20 years of marriage, she asked, reviewing the evidence I'd already gathered. I have to say, you've done excellent work here. Most clients come to me with just suspicions. I'm very thorough, I said. That you are. I can have photo evidence within a week. They seem to stick to a schedule, which makes this easier. Photo evidence. The thought should have horrified me, but instead, I felt that cold satisfaction spreading through my chest again. Let them have their Saturday afternoons. I'd make sure those moments cost them everything. Patricia's first report arrived Friday morning. Richard and Olivia entering the Riverside Hotel at 2:17 p.m. the previous Saturday. Kissing in the lobby like teenagers, holding hands in the elevator. The timestamps would match perfectly with Richard's lie about working late. But the most damning photo was them leaving the hotel at 6:30 p.m. Olivia was wearing the silk scarf I'd given her for Christmas, and Richard had his arm around her waist possessively. They looked like a couple celebrating an anniversary. Our anniversary was in 3 weeks. That night, I lay next to Richard and felt nothing but contempt. He smelled like Olivia's perfume, that expensive French fragrance she'd started wearing recently. When he tried to kiss me goodnight, I turned away, claiming a headache. "You've been having a lot of headaches lately," he said, concern creeping into his voice. "Just stress about the party planning," I lied smoothly. "I want everything to be perfect for our anniversary." "It will be." He stroked my hair gently. 20 years, Stephanie. Can you believe it? "No," I whispered. "I really can't." The next morning, while Richard was in the shower, I made the calls that would change everything. First, to my divorce attorney, giving her the green light to prepare papers. Then to my financial advisor, moving money into accounts Richard didn't know about. Finally, to the photographer I'd hired for the anniversary party. I want to make sure you capture every moment, I told him, especially the speeches. I have a feeling there will be some very memorable reactions. I spent that weekend perfecting my plan, while Richard was supposedly at the office, probably tangled up with Olivia in room 1247. I changed passwords on accounts he'd forgotten I had access to. I made copies of important documents. I even drafted the speech I'd give at our anniversary party. Every detail had to be perfect. The guest list included both their families, our closest friends, Richard's colleagues. Everyone who mattered to either of them would be there to witness their shame. Sunday evening, Richard came home with that guilty look I'd learned to recognize. His hair was slightly messed, his shirt wrinkled in a way that suggested hands had been all over it. How was work? I asked innocently. Productive. He kissed my cheek, and I smelled Olivia's shampoo in his hair. The Peterson account is really coming together. Lies upon lies upon lies. But I just smiled and served dinner, playing the devoted wife one more time. In 2 weeks, the performance would be over. That night, I dreamed of standing in front of everyone we knew, holding the photos Patricia had taken. I imagined the gasps, the shocked faces, Richard's excuses crumbling under the weight of evidence. I imagined Olivia's tears when she realized her best friend had played her perfectly. Most of all, I imagined walking away from both of them with my head held high, leaving them to face the consequences of their choices. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for them to walk into it. The following days blurred into a masterclass of deception that would have impressed even the most seasoned actress. Every morning, I woke up next to Richard and kissed his cheek, tasting lies on his skin. Every evening, I welcomed him home with dinner and questions about his day, listening to fabrications roll off his tongue like poetry. But the strain was beginning to show, and Richard was starting to notice. "You seem different lately," he said Tuesday morning, catching me staring at him over my coffee cup. I'd been studying his face, memorizing every detail for the moment I'd destroy him. Different how? I kept my voice light, innocent. I don't know, distracted maybe, like you're planning something. His eyes narrowed slightly, and for a terrifying moment, I wondered if he suspected. "I am planning something," I said, letting excitement creep into my voice. "Our anniversary party, remember? It's going to be unforgettable." Richard's face relaxed into that patronizing smile I'd grown to despise. "You don't have to go overboard, Steph. Just something simple. Simple, right, like his simple affair with my simple best friend." "Trust me," I said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "This party will be exactly what you and Olivia deserve." He didn't catch my emphasis on Olivia, too busy thinking about seeing her later, probably. The real challenge came that afternoon when Olivia dropped by unexpectedly. I was in my home office, organizing the evidence Patricia had delivered: more photos, detailed reports of their hotel visits, even receipts from the expensive lingerie Richard had bought her. The doorbell rang just as I was examining a particularly damning photo of them kissing outside the Riverside Hotel. My heart hammered as I swept everything into a folder and shoved it into my desk drawer. "Stephanie," Olivia's voice sang through the house as she let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago, back when I trusted her. In the office, I called, checking my reflection quickly. Smile in place, shoulders relaxed. She appeared in the doorway wearing a silk blouse I didn't recognize, probably another gift from Richard. The color brought out her eyes beautifully. No wonder he was besotted. "What are you working on?" She moved toward my desk, and I casually closed my laptop. "Anniversary party planning," I said. "You know how Richard loves surprises." Olivia's smile flickered for just a moment. "He certainly does," she said, and there was something in her tone that made my skin crawl. An intimacy, like she knew secrets about my husband that I didn't. Which, of course, she did. "I've been thinking," she continued, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Maybe I could help with the party planning. I have some insights into what Richard might enjoy." The audacity took my breath away. She wanted to help plan the party where I'd expose their affair. The irony was so perfect, it almost made me laugh. "That's sweet of you," I managed. "But I want it to be a surprise for everyone, even you." Something shifted in Olivia's expression. She studied my face more carefully than I was comfortable with. "You've been acting strange lately, Stephanie." Richard mentioned it too. She leaned forward, her voice taking on that concerned friend tone that used to comfort me. "Is everything okay between you two?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Here was my best friend, my husband's lover, asking if my marriage was okay while wearing a blouse he'd probably bought her. "Everything's perfect," I said, injecting warmth into my voice. "Why would you ask?" "I don't know, you seem different, more confident maybe. Like you're holding onto some secret. If only she knew." "The only secret I'm holding is this party," I lied smoothly. "I want it to be magical for Richard. He deserves something special after all these years." Olivia's eyes flickered again, and I caught something there, guilt maybe, or fear. Did she suspect I knew? Was she wondering how much longer she could keep sneaking around with my husband? "He does deserve something special," she agreed quietly. "Richard's a good man." The words hit me like a slap. My cheating husband was a good man, according to the woman he was cheating with, the woman who'd been my confidant for over a decade. "Yes," I said through gritted teeth disguised as a smile. "He really is." After Olivia left, I sat in my office shaking. The rage I'd been containing was building to dangerous levels. Every interaction felt like walking on glass, one wrong step away from shattering the careful facade I'd constructed. That evening brought another close call. Richard came home early, supposedly from a client dinner that had been canceled. I was in the kitchen printing copies of his credit card statements when I heard his car in the driveway. I flew to the printer, snatching the papers as they emerged. The last page was still printing when Richard's key turned in the lock. I crumpled the evidence against my chest and rushed to the bedroom, shoving everything under the mattress just as his footsteps hit the stairs. "Stephanie." His voice was closer than I'd expected. "Just changing." I called, grabbing the first dress I could find and pulling it over my head. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it. Richard appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. "Dinner got canceled," he explained, but his eyes were scanning the room, looking for something out of place. "That's too bad," I said, smoothing the dress over my hips. "I already ate, but I can make you something." "Actually," he said, moving closer, "I was thinking we could spend some time together. We haven't been close lately." The suggestion made my skin crawl. How could he even think about touching me when he was sleeping with Olivia, when he'd probably been with her just hours ago? But I couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. "Of course," I whispered, letting him pull me close. His hands moved over my body with familiar confidence, but all I could think about were Patricia's photos of these same hands touching Olivia. I closed my eyes and endured his kisses, his whispered endearments, his practiced touches. Every caress felt like a betrayal, every "I love you" like another lie to add to the growing pile. When it was over and Richard was asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and counted the days until the anniversary party. 7 more days of this charade. 7 more days of pretending I didn't know what I knew. 7 more days until I could stop being the perfect, trusting wife and become exactly what they'd turned me into, their worst nightmare. I thought about Olivia's words that afternoon, about how I seemed different, more confident. She was right. I was different. The woman who discovered those text messages was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, more dangerous. Someone who could smile while plotting revenge. Someone who could kiss her cheating husband goodnight while planning to destroy him. What would you do in my position? Tell me in the comments below. Because tomorrow, I'd have to wake up and do it all over again. The next morning, I woke with a clarity that surprised me. Richard was already gone, probably another early client meeting that would conveniently run until evening. I'd stopped believing his excuses weeks ago. I made my coffee and settled at my laptop, reviewing Patricia's latest report. The private investigator had been thorough, but I needed more. I needed something undeniable, something that would leave no room for Richard's silver tongue to twist the truth. That's when I remembered the security cameras. The Riverside Hotel wasn't some cheap motel. It was upscale, the kind of place that kept detailed records and had cameras in every hallway. If Richard and Olivia had been meeting there for months, there would be footage. I called Patricia. I need something from the Riverside Hotel, I said without preamble. Security footage from their hallway cameras, room 1247, every Saturday for the past 4 months. That's going to be expensive, Patricia warned, and potentially illegal. I don't care about the cost, and I'm sure you know people who can get what we need without breaking any laws. There was a pause. Give me 48 hours. While I waited, I decided to do some digging of my own. Richard handled most of our finances, but I had access to our joint accounts. I'd been so trusting, so naive, never bothering to check where our money was going. What I found made my stomach turn. Flower purchases every week. Not for me, obviously. Restaurant charges at places I'd never been. Hotel room service. Gift purchases at jewelry stores and boutiques. All charged to our joint credit card. Richard had been funding his affair with Olivia using my money. Money I'd earned from my own career, my own hard work, being used to buy gifts for the woman who was helping destroy my marriage. I printed everything: bank statements, credit card records, receipts. The evidence folder hidden under my mattress was getting thick. That afternoon, Olivia called. Coffee, she asked, her voice bright and innocent. I feel like we haven't really talked in ages. I almost laughed. We talked plenty. She just didn't know I'd been listening to every lie. Of course, I said. The usual place. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Olivia at our neighborhood cafe, watching her stir sugar into her latte while she chatted about work, the weather, anything except the affair she was having with my husband. You know, she said, studying my face, you really do seem different lately. More, I don't know how to put it, focused. I smiled over my coffee cup. I've just been thinking about what I want out of life, what I deserve. Good for you, Olivia said, but something flickered in her eyes. Concern, guilt. Richard's lucky to have someone so dedicated. The way she said dedicated made it sound like a weakness, like I was some pathetic wife clinging to a man who didn't want me. He is lucky, I agreed, though I wonder sometimes if he realizes it. Olivia's phone buzzed on the table between us. Without thinking, she glanced at it, and I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. R. Richard, texting her while I sat right here. She quickly turned the phone face down, but not before I saw her lips curve into a small, secret smile. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Oh, just work stuff, she said, but her cheeks were flushed. I wanted to grab that phone and read every message. I wanted to throw my coffee in her lying face. Instead, I smiled and asked about her weekend plans. Actually, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, I might have some exciting news soon about my love life. The audacity took my breath away. She was practically glowing as she talked about her mysterious new man, my husband, sitting across from me, his wife, acting like we were still best friends. How wonderful, I managed. Anyone I know. Her smile turned almost predatory. You might be surprised. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in the mirror, gripping the sink until my knuckles went white. 7 days until the anniversary party. Could I hold it together that long? When I returned to the table, Olivia was typing rapidly on her phone, her face animated. She looked up guiltily when she saw me. Sorry, just, you know how it is when you're excited about someone. But I knew exactly how it was. I also knew she was texting my husband, probably arranging their next rendezvous, probably laughing about how clueless his wife was. That evening, Patricia called. I have your footage, she said, and Stephanie, you're going to want to see this. An hour later, I was sitting in Patricia's office watching security camera footage on her laptop. There they were, clear as day, Richard and Olivia, walking down the hotel hallway every Saturday for months, holding hands, stopping to kiss against the wall outside room 1247. Richard's hand on the small of her back as he slid the key card. But the footage Patricia had obtained went beyond just the hotel visits. My contact also got audio from the hotel bar, Patricia said quietly. From last Saturday. I think you should hear this. She pressed play on an audio file. Richard's voice filled the small speakers, and my blood turned to ice. She's so trusting it's almost pathetic, he was saying. Stephanie still believes I'm working late every Saturday. She actually thanked me last week for being such a hard worker. Olivia's laugh was sharp and cruel. Poor thing, she has no idea her precious husband is here with me instead of reviewing contracts. The anniversary party will be perfect timing, Richard continued. After 20 years of marriage, she'll never see it coming. We can make our announcement. And by the time she recovers from the shock, we'll already be moved in together. I can't wait to see her face, Olivia said. 20 years of being the perfect wife, and she couldn't even keep her husband interested. But they were planning to announce their affair at our anniversary party. In front of all our friends, our families, they were going to humiliate me publicly before running off together. I sat in stunned silence as the audio continued. They talked about our shared friends, rating who would side with Stephanie versus who would understand that these things happen. They discussed my obvious desperation and how I'd been trying too hard lately. She bought new lingerie last week, Richard said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. It was almost sad, like she sensed something and was trying to compete with me. Olivia laughed. Please, we both know there's no competition. Patricia stopped the recording. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I know this is hard to hear. Hard, it was devastating. But it was also exactly what I needed. I drove home in a daze. The flash drive with all the evidence burning like a brand in my purse. Richard was in the living room when I walked in, reading on his tablet, looking so normal, so innocent. How was your day, honey? He asked without looking up. I studied his face, the face I'd loved for 20 years, the face that had lied to me every single day for 4 months. The face that had sat in a hotel bar with my best friend, calling me pathetic and planning my public humiliation. Perfect, I said softly. Absolutely perfect. He finally looked up, maybe catching something in my tone. "You seem different tonight." I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. "I'm just excited about the party. 6 more days. 6 more days to finalize my plans. 6 more days to perfect my revenge. 6 more days until Richard and Olivia learned what happened when you underestimated Stephanie Morrison. They thought they were so clever, so sophisticated, planning to destroy me in front of everyone I cared about. They had no idea I'd already won. The morning of our anniversary party dawned crisp and clear. I stood in our bedroom, watching Richard adjust his tie in the mirror, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. In 12 hours, this charade would be over. "You look beautiful," Richard said, his eyes meeting mine in the reflection. He was wearing the navy suit I'd bought him for his birthday. The same suit he'd worn to take Olivia to dinner last month. "Thank you." I smoothed my black dress, elegant, sophisticated, perfect for a widow, because after tonight, the Richard I'd married would be dead to me. The caterers arrived at noon, transforming our home into a celebration of 20 years of marriage. 20 years of what I thought was love, trust, devotion. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched them hang the banner. Richard and Stephanie, 20 years of love. Olivia arrived early to help, as I'd known she would. She wanted to scope out the venue for tonight's planned humiliation. "Everything looks gorgeous, Steph," she said, air-kissing my cheek. The same lips that had whispered poison about me in that hotel bar. "You've outdone yourself. Only the best for Richard," I replied, watching her face for any flicker of guilt. "Nothing. After all, he deserves everything that's coming to him tonight." She laughed, completely missing the double meaning. "You're such a romantic. It's almost sweet, almost pathetic," she meant. I could hear it in her tone, see it in the slight smirk she tried to hide. She thought she was so clever, standing in my home, wearing the dress Richard had complimented just yesterday, preparing to destroy my life in front of 50 guests. By 6 o'clock, our house was filled with family, friends, and colleagues. Richard worked the room like the charming man everyone believed him to be, accepting congratulations, sharing stories about our perfect marriage. I watched him laugh with my father, hug my sister, shake hands with his business partners. All the while, his eyes kept finding Olivia across the room. She looked stunning, I had to admit. The red dress hugged her curves perfectly, probably chosen specifically for tonight's big reveal. She'd positioned herself near the patio doors, ready for her grand entrance into the spotlight when the moment came. I played my part flawlessly. The devoted wife, gracious hostess, celebrating 20 years of wedded bliss. I accepted hugs, returned compliments, smiled until my face hurt, all while the flash drive containing their betrayal burned like a secret weapon in my clutch. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard called out as dinner wound down, tapping his wine glass. Before Stephanie and I cut the cake, I'd like to say a few words. This was it, according to Patricia's recording. This was when he planned to announce his affair. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my smile never wavered. 20 years ago, I married the most incredible woman I've ever known, Richard began, his voice carrying easily across the hushed room. Stephanie has been my rock, my partner, my best friend. My sister dabbed at her eyes. My mother beamed with pride. Several guests murmured appreciatively. If they only knew what was really happening. Richard's eyes found Olivia in the crowd. A brief nod passed between them. But marriage isn't always easy, he continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Sometimes you discover things about yourself, about what you really need. I could see the confusion starting to ripple through our guests. This wasn't the typical anniversary speech they'd expected. My father frowned. Richard's mother looked concerned. Olivia stepped forward slightly, ready for her cue. Actually, I interrupted, standing gracefully and moving to Richard's side. I'd like to say something first, if you don't mind, darling. Richard's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. This wasn't part of their plan, but he couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. So he nodded and handed me his glass. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began, my voice steady and warm. 20 years is a milestone worth celebrating. It's been a journey of discovery, learning about each other, about ourselves, about what we're truly capable of. I paused, letting my eyes sweep the room, landing briefly on Olivia's suddenly nervous face. I've prepared a little slideshow to commemorate our journey together. A visual reminder of all the memorable moments we've shared. Richard relaxed slightly. A slideshow sounded harmless enough, probably baby photos and vacation pictures. He had no idea what I'd really prepared. I moved to the laptop, connected to our large screen TV, my fingers steady on the keys, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Let's start with some recent memories, I said, clicking the first file. The screen filled with a photo of Richard and Olivia entering the Riverside Hotel together, date stamped just last Saturday. A collective gasp rose from our guests. This is from Patricia Chen, the private investigator I hired, I announced conversationally. She's very thorough. Richard went white. Olivia stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a waiter. Click. Another photo, Richard and Olivia kissing passionately in the hotel lobby. Click. Credit card receipts for flowers. Tulips, not peonies. Click. Hotel room receipts spanning 4 months. What would you tell your best friend if she was in my situation? Comment below, I said, looking directly at Olivia, whose face had drained of all color. My sister stood up, her face a mask of fury directed at Richard. My father's hands were clenched into fists. The room buzzed with shocked whispers and gasps. Stephanie, I can explain, Richard started, but I held up my hand. Oh, but I'm not finished yet. The best part is still coming. I clicked again, and the audio from Patricia's recording filled the room. Richard and Olivia's voices, crystal clear, discussing my pathetic attempts to save our marriage, planning tonight's public humiliation, mocking me with cruel laughter. Several guests stood and headed for the door. Others stared in horrified fascination. My mother-in-law was crying. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. 20 years, I said finally, my voice carrying clearly in the stunned quiet. 20 years I gave you the best of myself, Richard. 20 years of trust, devotion, and love. And this is how you repay me. Richard opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked like a man drowning. Olivia tried to slip toward the exit, but my sister blocked her path, her eyes blazing with protective fury. And you, I turned to face my former best friend. 15 years of friendship, 15 years of sharing secrets, supporting each other, being there through every triumph and heartbreak. You knew how much I loved him. You knew how devastating this would be. And you did it anyway. The room erupted, guests shouting, family members demanding explanations. The chaos of betrayal exposed in all its ugly glory. But I felt calm, peaceful even. For the first time in months, I was exactly where I belonged, standing in the truth, surrounded by people who truly loved me, watching my betrayers face the consequences of their actions. Richard and Olivia's carefully planned humiliation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of destroying me, they destroyed themselves. I smiled as I watched them both flee through separate exits, their grand romance reduced to a shameful scandal. 20 years of marriage was ending tonight. But my real life, the one where I knew exactly who I could trust, was just beginning. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. As Richard and Olivia's footsteps faded into the night, the room exploded into conversations I'd never imagined having. My mother-in-law, Patricia, was still crying, but now she was reaching for me with trembling hands. "Stephanie, honey, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. I had no idea. None of us did. But Richard's father stood frozen by the bar, his face ashen. The man who'd welcomed me into their family 20 years ago looked like he'd aged a decade in 20 minutes. His business partners, 3 men who'd known Richard since college, were huddled together, their faces grim. "This changes everything," I heard one of them mutter. The Henderson account, the Morrison deal. How do we explain this to clients? My sister Emma appeared at my side, her arm sliding protectively around my waist. "You did it," she breathed. "You actually did it." But the victory felt strange now. Hollow in some ways, complete in others. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "We need to talk. This isn't over." I showed Emma the screen. She snorted. The audacity of that woman. Even now, she's trying to control the narrative. Across the room, my friend Sarah was comforting her husband, who looked shell-shocked. "I played golf with Richard every weekend," he kept saying. How did I miss this? How did I not see? But that's when it hit me, the true scope of the devastation. This wasn't just my marriage ending. This was an earthquake through our entire social circle, our community, our carefully built life. Patricia approached me again, her eyes red-rimmed. Stephanie, I need you to know, whatever happens with the divorce, with the house, with everything, you're still my daughter. You'll always be my daughter. The words broke something loose in my chest. For months, I'd been so focused on the betrayal, on the revenge, on proving I wasn't the pathetic, clueless wife they'd mocked. I'd forgotten about the people who truly loved me. Thank you, I whispered, letting her embrace me. Richard's phone, forgotten on the gift table, kept buzzing. Emma picked it up, her eyebrows rising. 17 missed calls from his office. Word travels fast. The catering staff moved through the chaos like ghosts, clearing champagne glasses and untouched appetizers. The anniversary banners still hung overhead. Richard and Stephanie, 20 years of love. Now a cruel joke, suspended in silk and gold lettering. My neighbor Janet squeezed my hand. I always thought something was off about Olivia, the way she looked at Richard, the way she'd show up when you weren't home. You knew, not knew, suspected. But what do you say? Hey, I think your best friend is sleeping with your husband. You hope you're wrong. More people approached, some to offer support, others clearly uncomfortable, probably wondering what this meant for their own friendships with Richard and Olivia. I watched the social calculations happening in real time, alliances shifting, loyalties being weighed. That's when Olivia's husband Marcus burst through the door. The room fell silent. Marcus looked wild, his shirt untucked, his usually perfect hair disheveled. His eyes found me across the crowd. Where is she? He demanded. Where's Olivia? She left, Emma said carefully. About 20 minutes ago. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Of course she did. Left me to find out from our babysitter that my wife's been screwing her best friend's husband. The babysitter, Stephanie, a 19-year-old college student, had to tell me my marriage was over. The humiliation in his voice was devastating. Here was another casualty of their selfishness, another life destroyed by their betrayal. Marcus, I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry you found out this way. How long have you known? 3 months. I found out 3 months ago. He nodded slowly, processing. And you've been planning this whole exposure. Yes, good, he said fiercely. Good. They deserved this. They deserved worse. Richard's business partner approached us hesitantly. Stephanie, I hate to bring this up now, but the firm, Richard's partnership, this kind of scandal. I understand, I said, and I did. Richard's law firm prided itself on integrity, on family values. This wouldn't just cost him his marriage, it would cost him his career. Emma handed me a glass of water. You should sit down. You've been standing for hours, but I couldn't sit. The adrenaline was still coursing through me, the strange combination of triumph and devastation keeping me upright. Patricia touched my arm. What happens now? With the house, with everything. Now we deal with lawyers, I said simply. Now we untangle 20 years of shared life. My phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen. The room watched as I answered. "What? Stephanie, please. We need to talk. Not here, not with everyone. Please." His voice was broken, desperate. Part of me, a small, stubborn part that had loved him for 2 decades, almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "There's nothing to talk about, Richard. You made your choice. You both did. It's not what you think. It's not. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. No, you're right. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was supposed to happen at our anniversary party, with me as the victim, and you as the hero, finally brave enough to leave his pathetic wife for his true love. Remember, I have the recording." Silence. "The divorce papers will be filed Monday," I continued. "Don't come home tonight. Don't come home at all." I hung up. The room was still watching me. 50 people who'd come to celebrate our marriage, now witnesses to its spectacular destruction. "I think," I said finally, "it's time for everyone to go home." People began to move, offering hugs, promising calls, making the awkward exit from a party that had become a wake. Emma and Patricia helped me gather the evidence materials: the laptop, the flash drive, the printed photos scattered across the gift table like obscene confetti. "You know what the strangest part is?" I told Emma as we packed up my carefully planned revenge. "I thought I'd feel different, more satisfied maybe, more complete." "How do you feel?" I considered the question as I looked around the empty venue, at the abandoned anniversary banner, at the life I'd just systematically dismantled. "Free," I said finally. Devastated and free, Marcus appeared beside us, his car keys in his hand. "Stephanie, if you need anything during the divorce, someone to testify about their behavior, financial records, anything, call me. We're in this together now." I nodded, understanding that Richard and Olivia's betrayal had created an unexpected alliance between their abandoned spouses. As we walked to the parking lot, my phone buzzed with messages. Friends who'd heard about the party, family members checking in, reporters. Somehow the story was already spreading. By morning, everyone would know. Richard's clients, Olivia's book club, our children's teachers, the private humiliation had become public scandal, exactly as I'd planned. I slid into Emma's car, finally allowing exhaustion to hit me. "Where to?" she asked. "Home," I said, then caught myself. "You're home. I don't have a home anymore." "You have us," she said simply. "You'll always have us." As we drove through the quiet streets, I realized that Richard and Olivia had given me an unexpected gift. In trying to destroy me, they'd shown me exactly who I could trust, exactly who deserved my love. The marriage was over. The friendship was over. But I wasn't. The next morning came too quickly. I woke up in Emma's guest room to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. 17 missed calls from Richard, 43 text messages, and a voicemail box that was completely full. I padded to the kitchen where Emma was already making coffee, her face grim as she scrolled through her tablet. "It's everywhere," she said, without looking up. Local news picked it up. Someone posted the video on social media. She turned the screen toward me. Cheating husband exposed is trending. I stared at the grainy footage someone had recorded on their phone during the slideshow. There was Richard's face, frozen in horror as his affair played out on the big screen. There was Olivia, her mouth open in shock. And there was me, standing calm and composed in my red dress, holding the remote like a weapon. Jesus, I whispered. My phone rang again. Richard's name flashed on the screen, accompanied by that photo of us from our honeymoon in Greece. Both of us tan and laughing, his arms wrapped around me from behind. The irony wasn't lost on me. I answered on the fourth ring. Stephanie, thank God. His voice was hoarse, desperate. We need to talk, please. I can explain everything. Can you? I settled into Emma's kitchen chair, wrapping my robe tighter around myself. Can you explain 4 months of lying to my face? Can you explain spending our anniversary fund on hotel rooms with my best friend? It wasn't supposed to happen. It got out of control. But what got out of control, Richard? The affair or getting caught? Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. I love you, Steph. I never stopped loving you. This thing with Olivia, it was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. A mistake. I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. 4 months of fucking my best friend while I planned our anniversary party. That's not a mistake, Richard. That's a choice. Emma raised her eyebrows at my language, but I was beyond caring about propriety. Where are you? Richard asked. I went by the house. You're not there. Your car's gone. I'm somewhere safe. Somewhere you can't manipulate me with those puppy dog eyes. And that voice you use when you want something. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to save our marriage. Our marriage died the first time you touched her. The words came out steady, final. I just gave it a proper funeral last night. Stephanie, please, don't do this. Don't throw away 20 years. Because of one mistake. There it was again, mistake. As if betrayal was something that just happened to him, like catching a cold. I already filed the papers, I said quietly. The silence was deafening. What papers? Divorce papers. My lawyer filed them yesterday morning. You should be served today. I took a sip of Emma's coffee, savoring the bitter warmth. I also froze our joint accounts and had all the credit cards canceled. Turns out judges don't look kindly on husbands who use marital funds to finance affairs. You can't do that. That money belongs to both of us. Actually, I can. And I did. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. Oh, and Richard, I sent copies of everything to your firm's HR department. The photos, the receipts, the hotel footage, all of it. Stephanie, no. You don't understand. If they find out about this, I could lose my partnership track. I could lose everything. Everything. My voice rose. You mean like how I lost everything? My husband, my best friend, my sense of reality. Like that kind of everything. That's different, is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly the same. I could hear voices in the background. Someone was with him. Is she there? I asked. Is Olivia there with you right now? No, it's my brother. He came over when he heard. Heard what? That his brother is a cheating piece of shit. That must have been an interesting conversation. Stephanie, please, just tell me where you are. Let me come see you. Let me try to fix this. There is no fixing this, Richard. There's only moving forward. And I'm moving forward without you. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. Emma refilled my coffee cup. How do you feel? I considered the question. Powerful, I said finally. For the first time in months, I feel powerful. My phone rang again. This time it was Patricia, Richard's mother. Hello, Patricia. Oh, sweetheart. Her voice was thick with emotion. I just heard. I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed of my son. But the unexpected kindness in her voice nearly broke me. It's not your fault. I raised him better than this. I know I did. She paused. What can I do? How can I help? Just don't ask me to forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I wouldn't dream of it. What he did is unforgivable. What they both did. Her voice hardened. I've known Olivia since she was in college. I welcomed her into our family. I trusted her with my son's happiness, and you with hers. This betrayal, it's beyond comprehension. We talked for 20 more minutes. She told me she'd already spoken to her lawyer about testifying in the divorce proceedings, if needed. She promised to make sure Richard faced consequences for his actions, not just from me, but from his entire family. After I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. The rage was still there, but it was crystallizing into something else, something colder and more focused. What would you tell your best friend if she was in my situation? Comment below. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Olivia's asking for a separation. She wants to work on herself. Apparently, she's the victim in all this. I typed back, let her work on herself from her own apartment. You deserve better. So do you, came his immediate reply. Emma looked over my shoulder at the exchange. He's right, you know. You do deserve better. I know, I said, and for the first time, I actually believed it. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Emma went to answer it while I stayed in the kitchen, suddenly aware that I was still in my pajamas and robe. Delivery for Stephanie Walsh, I heard a voice say. Emma returned with a thick manila envelope. Divorce papers, she said simply. I opened the envelope and pulled out the documents. There it was in black and white, the end of my marriage. But instead of sadness, I felt relief washing over me. My phone rang one more time. Unknown number. Mrs. Walsh, this is Jennifer Chen from Channel 7 News. I was wondering if you'd be willing to do an interview about last night's events. Our viewers are very interested in your story. I looked at Emma, who was shaking her head vigorously. No comment, I said, and hung up. But as I sat there, holding my divorce papers and watching the morning sun stream through Emma's kitchen window, I I realized something important. This wasn't the end of my story. This was just the end of the chapter where I was someone else's wife, someone else's victim. The next chapter, that was going to be entirely mine to write. 6 months later, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the emerald green silk dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized from that night at Emma's kitchen table. My hair was shorter now, styled in a sleek bob that framed my face. My skin glowed with the confidence that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I deserved. The divorce settlement had been everything I'd hoped for and more. Richard's public humiliation had worked in my favor. His desperate attempts to appear reasonable in court only highlighted his guilt. I kept the house, received a generous alimony package, and walked away with half of everything we'd built together. The irony wasn't lost on me that his affair with Olivia had cost him far more than he'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Looking forward to seeing you at the gallery opening tonight. You're going to be stunning, as always. Patricia had become one of my closest allies. She'd not only disowned Richard publicly, but had also introduced me to her circle of influential friends. You saved me from years of pretending that boy was worth my time, she'd told me over lunch last month. I should have known he was his father's son. I slipped on my black heels and grabbed my clutch, pausing to look at the framed photo on my dresser. It was from Emma's birthday party last week. Me, Emma, Patricia, and Marcus, all laughing together at some joke I'd made about Richard's new studio apartment. We'd become an unlikely family of sorts, bonded by our shared experience of his betrayal. Marcus had been particularly supportive. His own divorce from Olivia had been swift and brutal. She tried to claim she was the victim of manipulation, but the evidence I'd provided had made that impossible. Last I heard, she was working at a small marketing firm across town, her reputation in our industry completely destroyed. The gallery opening was at the Morrison Contemporary, a sleek space downtown that showcased emerging artists. I'd started attending cultural events again, rediscovering parts of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. Tonight's featured artist was someone named David Chen, no relation to the reporter who tried to interview me that morning after the anniversary party. As I walked into the gallery, I felt heads turn. The attention no longer made me uncomfortable the way it had in those first weeks after the scandal. Now, I wore it like armor. People whispered about me, but the whispers had changed. Instead of pity, I heard admiration. Instead of poor Stephanie, I heard, don't mess with Stephanie. Stephanie, Patricia appeared at my elbow, resplendent in navy blue. You look absolutely radiant. Come, there's someone I want you to meet. She led me through the crowd toward a tall man with salt and pepper hair, standing next to a striking abstract painting. He was probably in his early 50s, with intelligent dark eyes and strong hands that gestured expressively as he spoke to a small group of admirers. "David," Patricia called out, "I'd like you to meet my dear friend Stephanie Walsh." David Chen turned toward us, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine attraction, sparked by respect rather than manipulation. His smile was warm and authentic as he extended his hand. "Ms. Walsh," he said, his voice carrying just a hint of an accent. "Patricia's told me so much about you. I have to say, I admire your courage." I raised an eyebrow. "My courage, standing up for yourself the way you did." "Patricia mentioned you faced a difficult situation and handled it with remarkable grace and intelligence." I felt my cheeks warm slightly. I just refused to be anyone's victim. "That's exactly what I mean," David said, his eyes holding mine. "It takes real strength to turn betrayal into empowerment. Your story has become quite legendary, you know." And Patricia excused herself with a knowing smile, leaving David and me alone near his painting. The piece was bold and dynamic, swirls of deep red and gold that seemed to dance across the canvas. "Tell me about this one," I said, stepping closer to examine the brushstrokes. "It's called Phoenix Rising," David explained, moving to stand beside me. I could smell his cologne, something woody and sophisticated. I painted it after my own divorce. Sometimes we have to burn everything down to discover who we really are. I turned to look at him, surprised by his honesty. "And who did you discover you were?" "Someone who deserved better than settling for scraps of affection," he said quietly. "Someone who was worth more than being taken for granted." The way he looked at me made my pulse quicken. It had been so long since a man looked at me like I was fascinating rather than convenient. "Would you like to see the rest of the collection?" David asked, offering his arm as we walked through the gallery. David shared the stories behind each piece. His passion for his art was infectious, and I found myself genuinely engaged in a way I hadn't been with anyone in years. When we paused in front of a painting called New Beginnings, a sunrise breaking through storm clouds, I felt his fingers brush against mine. "Stephanie," he said softly, turning to face me, "I hope this isn't too forward, but would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Somewhere we can actually hear each other talk." I smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement in my stomach. "I'd like that very much." And just then, I caught sight of a familiar figure near the gallery entrance. Richard stood there in an ill-fitting suit, looking lost and desperate. His hair was unkempt, his face drawn. He'd clearly been drinking. David followed my gaze and immediately understood. "Would you like me to handle this?" "No," I said firmly. "I've got it." I walked over to Richard, my heels clicking confidently on the polished concrete floor. He looked up at me with a mixture of hope and desperation that might have moved me once. Now, it just made me feel sorry for him. "Stephanie," he said, his voice slurring slightly. God, you look incredible. I've been thinking about us, about what we had, What we had was a lie, Richard, I said calmly. And what you're doing now is pathetic. His face crumpled. I made a mistake. Olivia meant nothing. You were everything, and I threw it away for someone you thought was beneath me, I finished. I heard the recording, remember? I know exactly what you thought of me. Richard's shoulders sagged. Behind him, I could see gallery security approaching, alerted by his obvious intoxication. I lost my job, he whispered. My apartment is a shoebox. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you deserve, I said, feeling no satisfaction in his misery, just complete indifference. And I have exactly what I deserve too, a life without you in it. I turned and walked back to David, who was watching with concern and admiration. As security escorted Richard out, David placed a gentle hand on my lower back. Are you all right? He asked. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it completely. Later that evening, as David walked me to my car, he stopped under a streetlight and looked at me with those intelligent eyes. You know, he said, when Patricia first told me about you, I expected to meet someone who'd been broken by betrayal. Instead, I met someone who'd been forged by it. He leaned closer, and I felt the electric anticipation of a first kiss from someone who saw my strength rather than my scars. Tomorrow night, I whispered, my lips almost touching his. Can't come soon enough. As I drove home to my beautiful house, my house, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back was radiant, powerful, and absolutely unstoppable. I hadn't just survived Richard's betrayal. I had conquered it, transformed it into something that made me stronger, wiser, and infinitely more valuable. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't destroying him. It was becoming the woman he never deserved in the first place.